So I think Sezgi has actually joined us. I'm looking down at my notes, but I do see some things flashing here on Zoom. So I
Thank
will
you.
stop there and maybe turn it over to Sezgi so she can make her presentation.
Thank you so much. Yes, since I have just 12 minutes, I'm going to be quick. And mine is a presentation of my findings for fieldwork. And I collected some mahalle stories, which means neighborhood stories. And my field work was based on in-depth interviews in a mahalle, in a neighborhood, which is called Rasim Pasha in Kadıköy, Istanbul, which was an exemplary model for participatory model for revitalized area, and it is highly popular today these days because it has some Ottoman buildings and residues, and the heritage, the cultural heritage is still there, but the demography is not the same, of course. And in my field work, it lasted for 6 months, and I focused on the local people, how they remember the past, the non-Muslim communities who lived there for a long time, and how they also react to the changes in the mahalle, in the neighborhood. So from the perspective of the locals, they were having this clear nostalgia of the non-Muslim communities who lived there for a long time, and they were actually looking to these communities as their komşu, their neighbors, and they were having this longing for these old times, like they were remembering these times as they were a big family. So they were giving some examples, like when non-Muslim shopkeepers who made the first sale of the day in the morning, they usually send their second customer to the nearest Muslim shopkeeper so that they can also make their first sale in the morning. So they were sort of having the solidarity, and they were also referring to some values. So it shows us that the mahalle, the neighborhood, is an ethical universe, which is also giving us a new perspective in a way that it is not only a physical space for them still today. But since these people are non-Muslim communities are not there anymore, and there are new people, they were remembering these old times as if everything was in harmony. Everything is they were living next to each other, having this peaceful big family. But at the same time, when I asked them about these events that happened, for example, the attacks on the non-Muslims, the synagogue attacks in Istanbul, and they were telling me, like I'm quoting here, we were attending not their religious ceremonies, but we were going to the funerals. This is the neighborhood spirit that we are coming together in the bad times. But we understand that they feel not secure because there were attacks, there were no security anymore. The doors were closed, the synagogue doors were closed because they were attacked. And they were saying that we are a little bit barbarian. And now they remember, when they remember these events, they have this self-critique, so to say. And also, like the Greek community, when they were living there, they also had very good relationship with the Muslim communities. But when during the Cyprus peace operation in 1974, many of them left because they were not feeling secure. So now today, since there's this gentrification process also in this area, people living there, they were also having a new transformation. New people are coming, international students, Erasmus students, some artists. It's this cultural new middle class is coming, and it's also a very popular area for artists. So they were also very much unhappy with this change. Maybe this is why they were also somehow beautify the past, or having this nostalgia. And when they were talking about these new people, actually, they were really expressing their insecurity, and they were discontent with this change, revitalization, gentrification, and they were saying that they would prefer the non-Muslim communities as their neighbors rather than this ruthless cosmopolitan single freestyle living people who are much more individualistic. So I kind of take it that these interviews showed me that I need to rethink about the past, the local memory. And it is not just a mere nostalgia. It is fueled by selective memories of the harmonious good old days with the Muslim and non-Muslim neighbors. It also today, it corresponds to a conservative communitarian call against this cosmopolitanism that pay reference to the idealization of the family, conservative moral ground that can be found in religious communities. So in that sense, I find it very interesting that the discussion over the mahalle, the past, present, and the future, it paves the way for further historical debate over the neighborhood memories and these new encounters and new understanding of the shared social and physical spaces, showing us that this urban identifications deconstruct the classical meaning of the settlement and identification processes. It may also reverse the traditional identification processes. So I think it's pregnant with new discussions when you go deeper into the local memory and how people would see the past and remember the past and compare it actually to present and the projections for the future. Maybe it's enough. I didn't look at my watch. Do I have time? More time or? Okay. So
because we're missing one panelist, right? So you have a little bit more time.
Okay. I'm sorry. So for me, it was a real experience actually, because my question started the meaning of the mahalle. Okay, because mahalle was something that we need to keep and preserve, and it's cultural heritage rooted in the Ottoman Empire. And I was curious about the meaning of it. But what it came from the fieldwork is that it is just a construct. And I think this fieldwork shows me actually that the social cultural changes can also change the past and how we perceive the past in a way, because it is not really convincing when these people are talking about the past as the harmonious good old days. It is impossible that these people are not get affected from this effervescent nationalism of the time. But they were not talking about it because they were very much reactive to the newcomers, and they were idealizing the past, and they were also somehow very much critical about the people who are coming to the neighborhood and residing in this neighborhood. And I think it also tells us something about this, the modernization, the urbanization policies. And there are many axes of discussion, of course. But I think it's important for us to go deeper into the local perception and why people are using the selective memories and how they are being used and abused sometimes by creating the past and rethink about it. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much, Sezgi.
Yeah.
Thank you. Kristen had some comments, remarks on your paper, so maybe this is time
thank
to
you.
Hear her a bit, and then I'm going to open it up to everybody's questions, basically, and your comments, of course, to Kristen's remarks.
Yeah, so I won't take too much time, but I have to start and say that reading this paper brought me back to the time, 10, 15 years ago when I spent a couple of years living in Kadıköy and Jafera Mahallesi, and kind of the politics have changed there. And so the interviews really brought this back to life, which was a pleasure. And I do think the interviews are the real highlight of this paper. And I agree with you that the nostalgia element, I think I found particularly compelling. And you can draw deeper down into this, I think, to talk about norms of cosmopolitanism, both how they are lived presently and how they are remembered, and versus what cosmopolitanism actually looked like and how people remember it working. And I think you kind of are getting at this in the paper a little bit. You're going there, but I'd like to see you go there a little bit further. And a few things that I think do come out quite eloquently in the interviews is that, cosmopolitanism is remembered in the particular case, or the Mahalle culture is remembered in this particular case, as one in which groups act on the basis of small acts of kindness and reciprocity, and these seem to figure into their retellings more prominently almost than anything else. And even in the interviews, when you see your respondents acknowledging different acts of difference, they do acknowledge these acts of difference or othering of minority groups potentially in some way, but they do so in a way that contributes to an idea of social cohesion as opposed to a way that would detract from it. And so they say things like, oh, but our Greek neighbors used to always say kalimera when, we would say kalimera and kalispera to them, or, we would attend one another's funerals. And so they would make this distinction of otherness, but then they would also kind of layer on top of that efforts that were made, efforts of reciprocity that were made so that acknowledgement of difference was not othering, but kind of more in an effort towards depicting a nostalgia of social cohesion. And I also particularly like how you juxtapose this against the new cosmopolitanism, or what you call the new internationalism of life, brought out in this kind of interloping, globe-trotting generation of young people that is much more self-involved and much more kind of internationalist and individualistic in their priorities and in their mindset. And I think the quote, and I would love to see more in this direction that really brings this out to life. We have one quote, and this was said to me oftentimes in the neighborhood, private life, what is that? Like, what is a private life even for? So you're really getting into the role of public life and creating Mahalle culture. And, I remember one of the phrases that I often heard in the neighborhood was, well, when I moved into my particular building was, you're not getting an apartment, Kristen, you are getting a neighbor, which is a, classic Turkish phrase. And so I thought of that phrase oftentimes when reading this paper. Just one or two areas for quick improvement. I don't want to take too much time, but I think there's some slippage between the terminology about revitalization versus gentrification. And so I think you can kind of sharpen some of that terminology here. Also, I think, you can dive a little bit deeper into how neoliberalism and kind of commercialization of public space seems to be degrading collective activity and collective nostalgia about cosmopolitanism. And then finally, two other last points. One was, I was a little bit unclear from the paper which time period people actually thought they were remembering when they spoke with you. So like, did you really prime them to think about a specific time period? And then lastly, I was wondering about competing notions of authority and local elites, like at the local level. So like somebody like, you know, a Mukhtar or another set of local religious elites, how they might be figuring into any of the interviews or dialogues. And then I was also thinking about competing linguistic conceptions of the local in Turkish. So oftentimes, you know, mahalle and semt are used interchangeably, but they are oftentimes also not, and they convey very different things in different sets of companies. So I wondered if in your interviews you heard those two words used in ways that might be able to help you explore some of the really rich dichotomies that you are bringing out here today. And then I will just also say, you know, it would be helpful, I think, contextually for the paper to say why Rasim Pasha is the neighborhood of choice. I think you have some reasons around the revitalization project, but you list a number of other neighborhoods in Beyoğlu, Teşvikiye, et cetera, that seem to be equally kind of relevant or potentially relevant to your particular case. So I'd love to hear why you chose this neighborhood as potentially as opposed to some others. So I'll leave that at that. And thanks again to all these panelists. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you. Thanks, Kristen. Now, before I go back to our panelists, I just want to turn to our audience and ask them if they have any questions. Oh, there it is. There's one. Özgür. Go ahead, please. You're on mute.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Hi. I have a question to. Oh, where is she? Oh, Sevil. Yes. So your presentation was very interesting for me and very informative. In my project, I am working on actually Turkish Jews and North African Jews living in two cities of a multinational state. I'm comparing their life stories. I'm listening. I actually already listened, so it's finished the data collection. So because of my dissertation, your presentation obviously was very, very interesting for me. So I was wondering, like during these events, were the Jews, where did the Jews live? Basically, I mean, where did they immigrate? From Turkey to where, and how many people were, how many people left in total? And it was very interesting because before coming to Canada for my doctoral studies, I had a comparative work also. I was hoping to compare Turkish Ottoman Jews with Moroccan Jews. I was hoping to compare their presence in these two countries. Well, it was not Turkey was not a country at the time, but the Ottoman Empire and also Morocco under French protectorate. But when I came here to Canada for my doctoral studies, I decided to focus on the community. So yes, I just wanted to emphasize this in order to show how my research intersects a little bit about with your research and historically, of course, before coming to Canada for my doctoral studies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now I'm on mute. Okay, sorry. Any other questions or comments from our audience? Thank you, Özgür. Thank you, by the way. No? Maybe, well, we still have time to come back to the audience. But if you would like to, maybe in the order of the presentations, if you would like any response to sort of respond to Kristen's comments or maybe things that you forgot that you'd like to add, maybe we can start with you, Berke.
Sure. Well, I'll start with the Greek part because it's easier to reply.
My article just came out about the Greek part of it in the Modern Greek Studies May issue, like this month. So I know it's a very...
Last but not least, Sezgi, we'd like to hear from you on Christine's remarks and anything you want to add.
First, I would like to apologize for being late. I have probably miscalculated the time, and I thought Istanbul is 8 hours ahead, so I thought 9:30 is okay, but I kind of miscalculated it, and I'm sorry that I didn't hear the other papers. But I will maybe have this opportunity to watch it again, right? And probably I will watch them again. So, Kristen, thank you very much for the comments and questions. And also, I'm so happy that, to hear that you also have the same experience, this Mahalle experience in Istanbul, in Jafera. And the reason that I have chosen Rasim Pasha is that this stands out as a participatory model, which is claimed by the municipality. But at the same time, there is also private companies involved, because this is an historical area and they cannot reconstruct buildings, or they cannot actually, they have limited permission to restore the buildings. But at the same time, this is not called gentrification, but renewal or revitalization. So the buildings are used and restored for new purposes, and they gain new functions. For example, a church turns out to be a cultural center, and formerly a theater, saloon, or hall turns out to be a workshop place for architects. So they call this revitalization projects run by both private and state sectors. And they claim that they also involved the participants, the locals, volunteers, and this communitarian actors. And this is why I thought maybe it is a successful model for this new urbanization. But when I go there, I kind of see that there's a reaction to it. And although they do not name it as gentrification, it is gentrification, because people are not happy with that, and they think that this new commercial mindset is there, and the rates are going, the rents are going higher and higher, and they feel like they are being kicked out from their mahalle because it's changing. They don't feel like they feel at home. And they never call it semt, actually. They call it always our mahalle, like a family, like a surname, as if they kind of constitute a big family. And they were actually, maybe this is why they were also reactive to the newcomers, because they represent this new cosmopolitanism, new commercialization. And they also don't understand, for example, why people go to cafes for having this social life. Why don't they go to their komşu and have coffee? And why are they socializing in a cafe? These youngsters, they were asking, the hipsters, and they were having this, reaction, and this individualistic spirit is coming, and they are not happy with that. Okay, and why Rasim Pasha? Because also of his revitalization model. Also, I lived there for 4 years, so I have a close connection with the people. This is why I have also chosen this place. This also good for me to observe the change. And the question, which is very important, I need to also include in the paper, that which time period they refer to, is that they were actually the people that I have talked, they were remembering the 60s when they were small kids, and they were remembering these actors like shopkeepers, non-Muslim shopkeepers, when they were shopping, and then when they were playing in the streets, and how they help each other, how they having the solidarity sort of life, and so on and so forth. And they mainly go back to the 60s when they were small kids. So the rest of the memories that come from their parents, I suppose, and they were referring to these events, the Cyprus peace operation, for example, or the synagogue attacks. Also, the 3 attacks at 80s, 90s, and year 2003. So that was the time period, and I should also include that more specifically in the paper. Thank you for your comments, by the way.
Well, I'm checking my time, and it seems like time flew by so fast. We've run out of time. So I'd like to thank again to all our panelists for these fantastic papers, sharing them with us, and to Christine Fabi for your remarks, suggestions, and all of the audience who's been with us today. Thank you so much, and hope to see you again on another panel next year. Bye.
Thanks. See you soon.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.